In a castle, an apprentice is eating her food when the man sitting in front of her at the dining table asks if she has ever thought about going outside. How about going outside for a change today? He says people claim taking a walk or doing light exercise after meals is good for health. The princess puts down her fork and says she is a sinner, and even being invited to a meal like this feels undeserved. Emotionally, she says she thinks it is right to take some time for reflection today. Curious, the man asks how long it has been since the last reflection. 2 weeks? The princess explains this period of reflection started because the weather was too hot, and she could not go outside because of it. The previous period of reflection happened because she laid down on comic books. The man asks if she apologized to the artists who drew those comic books. The princess awkwardly laughs and asks why they have to do this reflection in such a way. Are you asking because you really don't know? Well, this is the best place. I don't really want to go outside in the first place, she says loudly, though deep down she knows she cannot actually say that honestly. Instead, she says His Grace prepared a precious comic book and she is supposed to punish herself for crushing it with her bum. The man stares at her with a straight face and asks if that is not true. In a cheeky tone, he says anyone watching might think he is being too harsh on her. The princess replies that she is actually the kind of person who feels better by being punished. She says she has a very high standard of conscience while wiping her tears, adding that even breathing in the same place as him feels sinful for someone like her. Once again, the man teasingly tells her to do it more, which only leaves her bored. Frustrated, she asks why he is trying to kick her out when he was the one who told her to stay in the room. As her temper rises, she grabs the cake plate and declares she is going out now. The Salt family sinner is about to enter the room. She says she has been suffocating with guilt, so she is going in. While walking away, she says goodbye, and although the man tells her to wait, she is already gone. She enters her room, throws herself onto the bed, and melts into comfort. The bedding is the best, she says while picking up the cake plate she secretly brought for herself. She wonders if they will chase her over the food she packed. As she eats the cake, she realizes it is high in calories and thinks she can survive until lunch tomorrow without eating anything else while staying inside her room the whole time. If she just lies in bed, her calorie consumption will stay minimal, so she will not feel dizzy. Blackout curtains made from special oak leather hang around her room. She can enjoy everything while lying comfortably in bed. High-calorie foods that turn into energy even in small amounts, a room perfectly designed for a homebody with minimal movement, a life with maximum satisfaction. Relaxing comfortably, she says this is perfect, so this is what imperial confinement feels like. Forced Empress, that is the title of the novel she possessed. The main character is Lamia Salt, the treasure of the Salt Kingdom, a beautiful flower. Born into the royal family, she was considered someone with the potential to become king, but she was passionately pursued by the iron-blooded Crown Prince Raiden, and eventually the tragic heroine was kidnapped and confined. If I do not process these documents today, I won't get food, right? This person, and the one she possessed, was. I'll process everything tonight even if I have to stay awake all night, just let me have a piece of bread, she begs while kneeling down. Suddenly, a document is thrown into her face. What a bastard, why are you speaking back? Her half-sister April screams at her, telling her to do her tasks properly. She is merely an extra in this novel. For 3 months, she has been worked like a slave in the worst environment possible. While enduring another overtime shift, someone suddenly comes from behind and covers her mouth with a handkerchief. Quiet, Princess Lamia. Unless you want scars on your precious face. The man announces he has secured the princess and will knock her out before transporting her, but the moment she collapses, they realize she is not Princess Lamia at all. Exhausted, with a bag covering her face, she thinks it is unfair to die like this. As the bag is removed, she apologizes and says she is not Lamia Salt. She is just a maid, no, more like a slave. 2 men stand before her, and she recognizes the one who covered her mouth. Crying desperately, she begs them to let her live because she knows nothing. One of the men asks what is going on. The moment she sees him, she thinks he looks incredibly handsome. He definitely seems like the main character, but the male lead of this novel is supposed to be blonde, so could he be the villain instead? The kidnapper explains he brought her because he saw someone using Princess Lamia's seal. Another man comments that it looks like she is simply lying to survive while hiding her true identity. She immediately cries out that it is not a lie. She explains she was only doing what the princess ordered her to do because if she refused, she would not receive food or even be allowed to sleep. Tearfully, She says being a slave and obeying her master's orders is not a crime. The men exchange disappointed looks and whisper among themselves before deciding they will investigate the matter. For now, one of them orders the useless servant to be locked somewhere suitable, warning her to stay quiet if she wants to survive. As he leaves, she emotionally realizes this probably means they are not planning to kill her. Relieved, she celebrates surviving that death flag. And so, her imprisonment life begins, and surprisingly, it turns out incredibly comfortable. She can sleep more than 4 hours a day. Meals are brought to her room without her doing anything. Imperial confinement is not terrible at all, unlike how horrifyingly it was described in the novel. In the original story, all of Princess Lamia's achievements were actually things she created in the shadows. Lamia herself was a woman with no abilities besides her pretty face. She remembers the princess treating her like garbage, throwing her hard work into her face while screaming how dare an illegitimate child like her think she could live freely inside her father's house without spending her entire life working as a servant. In reality, she died from overworking, and now even here she is suffering the same fate. People always say possessing a novel changes your life, that you end up dating handsome men and succeeding, but this is the life she got instead. The only good thing is that she is skilled at work. Since she knows the world of the original story, handling the tasks becomes easy for her. Suddenly, the princess storms in and yells that she should have properly explained why the import amounts were increased because the old nobles questioned her and she could not answer. Calmly, she replies she already explained preparing for a bad year is important for the people's well-being. The princess screams that she should not be expected to know something like that. She cannot help thinking about why foolish bosses always get angry at her. While remembering all of this from inside the prison, she realizes her situation stayed exactly the same in both her past and present life. Yet somehow, this is the most peaceful and comfortable she has ever felt. She wishes she could stay like this forever, but then she remembers April Salt, the second princess of the Soul Kingdom. As the man lifts the book, he says this appears to be her identity, Princess Lamia's slave. She realizes she got exposed much faster than expected. Kneeling on the floor, she admits it is true, but if she tried saying she was treated like an actual slave, nobody would believe her anyway. While reading, the man suddenly asks why she does not try making him believe her. His completely different expression shocks her, and all she can say is what? Lately, the Soul Kingdom's movements have been a bit strange. Princess Lamia has been responding so deftly, almost as if she were spying on the Cleton Empire's plans, and this has truly started getting on his nerves. As he places his hand into his pocket, he pulls out a trade certificate used in the Soul Kingdom. Seeing it leaves her confused. Why does the Grand Duke have this? She notices the seal and realizes it has never been used in any trade with the Empire before, which means some unaccredited and unknown merchant group must have suddenly jumped into the deal. She explains it is a trade scam designed to snatch goods or commissions in the middle of negotiation. Anyone directly involved in the actual work would have recognized it immediately. Suddenly, a man approaches and whispers into the Duke's ear that the spy in Soul Castle reported Princess Lamia has been handling her duties completely differently from how she normally acts. If what that woman said is true. Hearing this, the Duke looks at her and says that would mean the one who has been causing him trouble this time is not Lamia, but her instead. The statement shocks her. He grabs her face and asks how she managed to figure out the Empire's scheme. Did she plan a spy? One who left absolutely no trace even under his watch? Confused, she thinks there is no spy at all because in the original story every single one of the Empire's plans had already been written out. She only wanted the innocent citizens of the kingdom to suffer as little as possible, and it did not even change the original flow very much. Grabbing his hand emotionally, she insists she truly knows nothing. The only thing she is guilty of is working hard exactly as she was told. Begging desperately, she asks if he can please let her off just this once. She says she does not expect to be sent back, but there is one thing she needs to say. If he just lets her live, she will devote herself to working without pay for the rest of her life, grinding her bones into service if necessary. Hearing this, he immediately orders his men to take her away. As she is escorted out, the man dragging her away coldly says the punishment for lying before His Grace the Grand Duke will be an extremely harsh environment. Terrified, she becomes convinced they are taking her to the torture chamber. They throw her into what appears to be a dreadful underground prison surrounded by all kinds of torture devices fit for a broken captive, or at least that is what she expected. Instead, she finds herself inside a surprisingly comfortable room. A window that blocks sunlight? Perfect. She always hated mornings because she never had blackout curtains before. Even better, there is a simple diet plan. Back when she worked 13 hours every day, she once survived an entire week on only energy drinks and sandwiches. The room is a little cramped, but since she plans on lying in bed anyway, she does not care at all. Hugging the pillow tightly, she thinks this is heaven for a homebody like her. This is the ultimate luxury. Since nobody will bother her for a while, she decides she is going to enjoy this imprisonment. Meanwhile, on the other side, Princess Lamia struggles while staring at documents, complaining that simply reading the words makes her head hurt and she cannot even focus for 10 minutes. If only her brothers had not died one after another before they were even fully grown, then their father would never have placed his hopes on someone as foolish as her. Her father tells her it is time for her to fulfill her role as well. Rumors about the Empire attempting to kidnap her have spread throughout the palace, leaving everyone uneasy. If people continue seeing her work as usual, they will feel reassured. He reminds her she spent plenty of time learning beside April, so it should not be difficult. Embarrassed, the princess grips the pen and admits she is not smart. No matter how hard she tries, she can never become like that girl. Angrily, she blames everything on April, saying if that bastard had not gotten herself carelessly kidnapped, none of this would have happened. However, she calms herself by reading a letter from her beloved Raiden. She believes it will help her focus. Fantasizing happily, she says Raiden is the only person who sees her as the wisest and most beautiful woman on the continent. Honestly, even reading his letters is difficult for her, but because it is kind Raiden, he would probably still understand someone like her. Determined, she promises herself she will finish writing her reply today. Elsewhere, the Duke asks if the prisoner is still acting the same. The assistant confirms there have been no signs of escape attempts or resistance at all. Considering she is a noble royal and the hidden figure who practically wielded authority in Princess Lamia's place, he originally thought there was no chance she could adapt to such poor conditions. Yet she has endured everything without even a single complaint, almost as if she is genuinely enjoying herself. How dreadful. Normally, most nobles begin begging for release after only 3 days in that prison, so surely she will not last much longer. The assistant asks how they should report the situation to His Highness the Crown Prince. Perhaps they should simply say the kidnapping of Princess Lamia failed, but they successfully uncovered the truth behind the matter. The Duke quietly thinks about it while the assistant adds there is no need for the Crown Prince to know about her at all. After a moment of silence, the Duke replies there is still something he wants to confirm first. She suddenly finds herself working again and immediately wonders why she is even working in the first place. What is happening? She thought being kidnapped and locked away meant she could finally rest for a while. Don't tell me that comfy life was all just a dream? While buried in work, a voice suddenly mocks her, saying a mere extra like her really thought being reborn inside a novel would magically fix her pathetic life. Turning around, she sees Princess Lamia in her worst form. The princess coldly tells her she is still destined to work herself to death in this life too. She will remain trapped inside the office until her body gives out, buried beneath endless mountains of paperwork, only to die all over again for nothing. Suddenly, she wakes up miserably and realizes it was all a dream. Holding the novel in her hands, she sighs that this serves her right for reading random books out of boredom. What an ending! As she places the novel beside her bed, she thinks if only she had a comic book right now. Her life in captivity had become so comfortable it was almost boring. Honestly, if she had to complain about one thing, it would be the fact she never even tried escaping and instead spent every day lazily relaxing around. Suddenly, the guard assistant enters the room. She wonders how long that man plans to keep showing up there anyway. Seriously, she has no plans to leave, so there is no reason for him to waste time visiting her while busy. The guard assistant suddenly explodes in anger, shouting he swore loyalty to the Grand Duke of Blair and telling her to stop trying to tempt him. Hearing this, she honestly feels like laughing at this point. The guard assistant then explains he came with a message from the Duke. Since she seems very satisfied with her stay at the Duke estate, it is only fair someone enjoying such luxurious accommodations pays the proper price for them. This completely shocks her. Comfortable, sure, but luxurious? Since when did being kidnapped and imprisoned become a paid experience? Nervously, she asks what kind of price they are talking about. Without another word, he throws a large pile of papers onto her. These are the damn construction documents that recently fell behind schedule. Her task is to review the cause of the delays and come up with a solution. Completely dumbfounded, she asks why they are giving something so important to a captive. She reminds him she already promised to work herself to the bone for free if they would just let her live. The guard assistant asks if there is anything else she wants to say. Quietly, she says no. He then warns her the deadline is 2 weeks, and if she fails, he will let her imagination handle the rest. Emotionally devastated, she thinks she believed this would become a cozy healing imprisonment life, but instead she somehow ended up as a kidnapped worker in another world too. Meanwhile, the Duke comments that if she truly is the person responsible for giving the Empire all those headaches, then she might once again come up with a genius solution. The assistant asks what happens if she fails. Calmly, the Duke replies she will simply pay the price for lying to him. Suddenly, another assistant arrives and hands him a document, explaining it came from Princess April. The Duke becomes confused. How could that be possible? Even the assistant says there is no way she found a solution so quickly. Maybe it is a surrender letter, or perhaps she is about to beg for mercy while spilling information about her homeland. However, as the Duke reads the letter, all it says is she would appreciate it if this message could be delivered to the address written there. Both of them stare at it in confusion, wondering what exactly this is supposed to mean. 1 week later at the dam construction site inside the Grand Duchy, exhausted workers continue laboring under the blazing heat. Harvest season is approaching fast, and they have been working there for months without even receiving proper meals anymore. These commoner workers had all been conscripted from around the Grand Duchy for the massive construction project. One exhausted man says he misses his wife and wonders when he will finally be able to return home. Another worker, completely drained, wonders if there is anyone up there willing to help them. Suddenly, several men appear. The guard assistant announces that starting today, the Black Eagle mercenaries from the Illuminae Union will assist with the dam project. Once they are fully briefed, all the workers are ordered to return home by command of His Grace. Hearing this, the workers become emotional and can hardly believe they are finally allowed to go home. They immediately begin shouting "Long live His Grace" and "Long live the Grand Duke." The guard assistant then gives another order, saying they should recruit women from the Grand Duchy who desperately need work, such as widows and single mothers listed in the documents, women barely surviving alone. They are to replace the kitchen staff instead of forcing manor workers into those positions. This will also solve the meal provided clause included in the Black Eagle contract. Later, as the guard assistant approaches Princess April, she calmly asks if there is anything else he needs. Completely confused, he asks how on earth she managed to pull all this off. He specifically wants to know how she hired the Black Eagle mercenaries when they only ever worked for the Kingdom of Solt. Surprisingly, she replies it is all thanks to His Grace. This only confuses him more. She explains that after tricking Solt into selling massive amounts of wheat dirt cheap, the kingdom has been desperately trying to recover financially ever since. Naturally, they were forced to cut payments to the mercenaries they hired from the Illuminae Union. With their wages reduced, the mercenaries became desperate for new work. The person she sent the letter to, Geneva Galbro from the Illuminae Union, is the daughter of Count Galbro, owner of the Black Eagles and their chief negotiator. She simply made her an offer she could not refuse. The guard assistant asks what exactly she means by that. Princess April explains she removed every contract term the mercenaries hated while keeping everything they liked. On top of that, she stamped the agreement with the Grand Duke's seal to guarantee trust, making rejection impossible. Still confused, he asks how she could be so sure it would succeed. She explains she exchanged hundreds of letters with that difficult woman while acting in Lamia's place. He has no idea how many sleepless nights she suffered through just to understand the woman's way of thinking. Anyway, she already completed everything within the requested 2 weeks, meaning the deadline was met perfectly. The guard assistant is left speechless. Meanwhile, she simply asks if she can return to her room now. Honestly, the assistant admits he is impressed. Only someone experienced could have come up with the idea of employing low-income residents like that. She clearly possesses excellent organizational instincts. Even her handover process was so smooth he personally learned a few things just by watching her. Hearing this, the Duke admits he has become genuinely curious. Curious about what? The assistant asks. The Duke wonders why someone so intelligent and capable has never once attempted escaping. The guard assistant thinks about it before guessing maybe she wants something from there instead. Perhaps information regarding the Empire. Later, the Duke meets Princess April and asks her directly what she wants. Since she helped solve the Grand Duchy's problem, he believes it is only fair to reward her with one thing in return. Maybe one outing every day, or perhaps a tour through the mansion facilities. However, she immediately replies she already has a comfortable room, so why would she need any of that? Instead, she asks if she can request something else. Curious, the Duke listens carefully. She admits her room is nice and cozy, but honestly it gets a little boring after a while. To truly upgrade a homebody's life, there is one thing she absolutely needs. She wants a room filled with comic books. This completely confuses the Duke. Comic books? She explains all the books there are painfully boring and she has been dying to read comics again. The Duke asks what comic books even are. At that moment, she suddenly realizes this world probably does not even know comics exist. Could she actually convince the Northern Grand Duke from a romance novel world to understand comic books and agree to get them for her? While the Duke quietly thinks about it in confusion, Princess April excitedly wonders if she can truly upgrade her shot in life there after all. A huge crowd of people gathers together, leaving Princess April confused as she asks who all these people are. The assistant explains that the man in front is Lord Brown, a former royal painter, while behind him are Lord Cedric and Lord Robid, both famous instructors who taught art at the academy. Princess April quietly whispers to the assistant, wondering why such distinguished figures are all gathered there. Calmly, he replies they are there to produce a comic book, which completely shocks her. The Duke explains that a comic book was described to him as a book that tells a story through pictures, so he gathered the Empire's finest artists for the task. Hearing this leaves her overwhelmed with happiness. Almost tearing up from how touched she feels, she asks if he really brought such elite professionals all the way there just to make a comic book for her alone. In a strangely romantic manner, the Duke gently lifts her chin and asks if she still looks dissatisfied. Is there anything else she wants? He tells her to speak freely and ask for whatever she desires. Flustered, she quickly insists she is perfectly fine and does not need anything else at all. Satisfied, the Duke tells her to make sure she explains everything properly to them. Completely confused, she asks what exactly she is supposed to explain. Naturally, he replies the comic book production process. Instantly, panic fills her mind because she has absolutely no idea how she is supposed to explain comics to people from another world. Meanwhile, the artists gather together discussing the rough sketches among themselves. One artist comments that the aggressive style feels copied from some foreign tribe, while another immediately argues that it is not copied at all but evolved. Trying to guide them, April explains that even rough sketches are perfectly fine as long as the scene itself is conveyed properly. There is no need to spend excessive effort on every little detail. What truly matters is delivering the story clearly. The artists become confused and ask if she really wants them to place an actual story inside drawings, a completely new form of art. As expected from House Blair, one artist emotionally declares that art is a profound world constantly evolving and gaining new meaning every day, and once again he has been reminded of that truth. A few days later, the first comic book is finally completed. One of the artists proudly presents it, explaining it is a comic depicting the great achievements of the first Duke Blair. As April opens chapter 1, she immediately reads absurd lines describing how the great and noble Duke Blair was born from an egg, breathed fire at the age of 5 to slay monsters, and at 10 years old created fierce storms with a single flap of his wings while forging bombs from pine cones and cutting down enemies effortlessly. As she reads through it, she quietly realizes this is basically just an exaggerated heroic biography rather than an actual comic. Excitedly, the artist asks for her opinion, explaining the Duke personally said she would give the final evaluation. Awkwardly, she replies the quality is certainly impressive and the artwork is incredibly high level. Immediately, the artists proudly explain they poured their hearts into portraying the Duke's greatness because they believe the highlight of the story should be a main character with overwhelming and immeasurable power. Thinking carefully, April suggests maybe they should try aiming for a different purpose instead. The artists become confused and ask what she means. She explains she believes the true purpose of a comic book is entertainment. Hearing this leaves the artist stunned. She asks if they genuinely think the chronicle of the first Duke Blair is actually entertaining. One artist argues that rather than entertainment, the focus should be on honoring the Duke's achievements. Another explains that art created purely for amusement is considered low class, and wasting the labor of esteemed artists on something meant only for light entertainment would be disgraceful. Hearing this makes April think deeply. But isn't the true essence of art ultimately enjoyment? She explains that the reason people first began drawing, and the reason artists still exist today, is to bring joy and happiness to others. The artists fall silent in confusion while she starts wondering if she accidentally said something completely ridiculous. However, one emotional artist suddenly admits that after spending so many years in the field, perhaps they all forgot what true passion really was. He says she is right. He begins recalling how he first picked up a brush simply because painting was fun, but eventually became obsessed with preaching about the greatness of art and using it to glorify himself instead. Art that entertains the viewer. That is what a comic book truly is. Suddenly, April gets an idea. She explains she believes she can provide them with an interesting story to work with, but there is also something she would like to ask in return. Curious, the artist asks what it is. She points toward one particular page and asks who was responsible for the sketches there. An apprentice named Ashley, working under Master Robid, nervously steps forward. Warmly smiling, April says she heard Ashley created the sketches for that page. Ashley immediately lowers her head in a miserable and insecure mood, explaining she has never once completed a proper piece in all 18 years of her life because her skills are far too poor. Even this time, she barely managed to help with rough sketches. Nervously, she asks if something went wrong with the sections she worked on. Growing more emotional, Ashley explains everyone always says her sketches look bizarre and strange. They even claim that if the comic failed, it would all become her fault. Tearfully apologizing, she says someone like her should never have participated in such an important project in the first place. Suddenly, April firmly stops her and tells her none of that is true at all. Happily, she explains the only truly outstanding part of the comic was Ashley's sketches. Ashley freezes in complete shock. April continues by saying it was the only section that genuinely felt like a real comic. Despite the dull story, the panel layouts and pacing were excellent. Holding Ashley's hands warmly, she tells her she wants to entrust her with what she believes is the most important role in comic book production. Later, while Ashley walks down the hallway, another artist deliberately bumps into her and sarcastically asks what the lady said after summoning her. Did she tell her to drop out of the next project already? More artists gather around mocking her. Ashley quietly explains she was actually asked to handle the direction instead. Hearing this, they sneer and say the lady must have finally realized Ashley is just the pathetic apprentice who spent 18 years doing nothing but rough sketches. Another artist from behind suddenly taps one of them on the shoulder and announces that Barrymore will handle the main artwork instead. Among all the apprentices, Barrymore has always stood out and was even called a genius back in his academy days. Mockingly, they say they at least expected Ashley to receive some form of patronage from the lady, because without it she will probably end up starving on the streets soon enough. As they walk away laughing, they sarcastically wish her luck and joke that maybe in 20 years she might manage to hold a tiny exhibition somewhere in a remote village. Left alone, Ashley recalls April's words about believing she has genuine potential and talent for comic book direction, something Ashley herself never believed in before. Later, the Duke summons Princess April once again. Curious, she asks why he called for her this time. The Duke replies he heard she has been extremely busy lately working on comic books and asks if she needs anything else. Without hesitation, she replies that if possible, maybe she could get a few extra snacks. Something sweet would be nice, though something salty would work too. The Duke is left speechless as he silently wonders if the only things she truly desires are comic books and snacks. Seeing his expression, she asks why he is staring at her like that and whether something is wrong. The Duke calmly replies that there is actually something he wants to give her instead. Suddenly, someone enters the room, instantly shocking her. As someone suddenly walks into the room, Princess April is shocked to see a girl greeting her politely. Curious, the princess asks who she is. The girl introduces herself as Bonita and explains she will be attending to her from now on. Cheerfully, she asks whether she may call her simply April or if she should use a more formal title instead. She tells April she can comfortably call her Bonita. Looking closely at her face, Bonita excitedly comments that from afar she could not tell, but April truly has beautiful eyes. Their corners turn upward, which makes people think she is always angry. She radiates the energy of a complete extrovert. Brightly smiling, Bonita says she looks forward to serving the young lady from now on. The Duke explains that if April needs anything in the future, she should not hesitate to tell Bonita. Internally, April becomes annoyed because she only asked for a few snacks, yet somehow he gave her an entire person instead. Still, she politely thanks him. Bonita happily explains she is excited to attend to April because everyone in the mansion has been curious about the new guest. She says she is relieved to learn April is actually kind and gentle. Bonita excitedly adds that Marina became incredibly jealous after hearing Bonita would be assigned to serve her. Curious, April asks who Marina is. Bonita explains Marina is one of the senior maids and among the longest-serving attendants in the mansion. She sees Bonita as her rival, especially after hearing she would be assigned to the suspicious young lady. Hearing that nickname leaves April confused, and she asks why she is considered suspicious. Bonita casually explains it is because she is a guest personally invited by the Grand Duke himself, so people assume the Duke assigned Bonita to carefully monitor her. Suddenly energized, Bonita asks what they will be doing today and how she can help. April quietly asks if she can do her a favor. Bonita immediately agrees enthusiastically and tells her to simply say the word. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ashley introduces herself nervously to the other artists. She explains the young lady assigned her as the director for this project. Showing them the new story provided by April, Ashley explains she already tried creating a storyboard based on it. However, while she explains the idea, the other artists begin criticizing everything. One of them asks what kind of background this even is. Another questions the paneling style while holding up the sample pages. They sarcastically ask if Ashley is trying to say they also need to draw backgrounds now simply because she is bad at drawing characters. Awkwardly, Ashley denies it, but they continue attacking her work. One artist criticizes the exaggerated perspective and asks if she even understands the basics of perspective drawing. Another asks why they should listen to someone like Ashley, who has always ranked last among students. If anyone deserves to lead the project, it should obviously be Barrymore, the senior apprentice. Ashley silently stands there, embarrassed and humiliated by all the criticism. Bonita witnesses the entire situation before rushing over to April and explaining nobody seems willing to listen to Ashley at all. Hearing this, April realizes her fears were correct. Nobody trusts the abilities of Ashley, especially because she was recommended by the suspicious young lady herself. Thinking carefully, April decides there is only one thing left she can do. Curious, Bonita asks what she means. Determined, April says she is going to speak directly with the Grand Duke. Later, April gathers the artists and explains there will be a competition to determine who becomes the representative director. The artists react in surprise while April calmly explains it seems everyone has trouble accepting Ashley as the director simply because she recommended her personally. Therefore, she thinks the best solution is to compare a comic created by Ashley against one created by another artist and allow the more talented person to become representative. If someone wins through fair results, then everyone should naturally be willing to trust and follow their direction. One artist raises his hand and questions who exactly will judge which comic is superior. If the results only depend on personal taste, then the competition would not be fair at all. April immediately replies that the evaluation must come from someone every person there can accept equally, and that person will be the Grand Duke himself. Hearing this instantly excites the artists. Frustrated yet thrilled, they realize this is their opportunity to directly impress the Grand Duke. Barrymore confidently believes His Highness will obviously choose his work over Ashley's. However, April coldly adds one condition. Anyone unwilling to accept the result afterward will be forced to leave the Grand Duchy entirely. She asks if everyone agrees to those terms, and they confidently accept without hesitation. Ashley, however, remains speechless. Meanwhile, the Duke comments that the very first favor Princess April ever requested from him was to act as a judge in a competition between apprentice painters. April politely apologizes, saying he is such a noble person that she feels terrible for troubling him over something so small, yet he still kindly agreed to help. The Duke teasingly asks if those words alone are all she plans to give him in return. Confused, April asks what exactly she is supposed to do for him. The Duke calmly explains that because he willingly helped the princess, she now owes him a favor in return. This leaves April even more confused. Looking at her with a different expression, he comments that she is useful in a very different way from others. He says he will think later about what he wishes to receive from her in return. As the Duke walks away, April quietly mutters that he is honestly terrifying. Meanwhile, the artists continue working intensely. Some of them confidently claim this competition is fortunate because His Highness will obviously select Barrymore's work. Standing behind them, Ashley silently thinks that if people truly had eyes, nobody would ever choose a monstrosity like her drawings. Later, Ashley quietly enters April's room looking gloomy. Noticing her mood immediately, April asks if something happened or if she is having trouble with work. Ashley denies it but nervously asks why April insisted on holding such a competition in the first place. She worries everyone will now see how untalented she truly is right in front of the Grand Duke himself. Worse, she fears she will embarrass the young lady who trusted her. April gently explains she asked the Duke to judge because his acknowledgement would carry far more weight than her own praise ever could. Ashley immediately disagrees, insisting that cannot possibly be true. April calmly tells her to trust her because soon everyone in the Grand Duchy will recognize Ashley's exceptional talent. She sincerely explains she truly respects Ashley's abilities. However, Ashley quietly replies that being acknowledged by April alone is already enough for someone insignificant like her. She insists she does not deserve respect from anyone. Hearing those words leaves April speechless for a moment before realizing she may have pushed Ashley too hard. Instead, April asks if Ashley would be willing to hear her story. She explains she used to be someone insignificant with nothing she wanted and nothing she cared about besides lying lazily in her room all day. But Ashley is different. Ashley has continued running toward her dreams all this time. Even when nobody else acknowledged her efforts, she never gave up and continued working tirelessly toward her passion. April tells her she deserves respect because her efforts will absolutely shine one day. Later, during the final judging, the names of all participants are intentionally hidden to ensure fairness. The Duke is asked to simply read through the books and choose the color of the ribbon attached to the one he likes best. While everyone anxiously watches him, completely on edge, the Duke silently reads through the submissions before finally selecting the book tied with the red ribbon. Looking up calmly, he asks who drew it. As the Duke places the book with the red band onto the table and asks who created it, everyone in the room is left shocked. The artists begin comparing the red book to the blue one, and most of them reluctantly admit the book with the red band is better. The Duke agrees with their opinion. He explains that while the blue band book had fancy illustrations, it lacked any real driving force that made the reader want to continue turning the pages afterward. In the end, it was nothing more than a picture book desperately trying to show off artistic skill. However, the red band book was completely different. Even though it was mostly black and white, the sections needing emphasis were highlighted with simple coloring that gave the pages life, and the use of various compositions made the scenes feel dynamic and engaging. Hearing such a detailed critique surprises April because this is supposedly a man who claimed he knew nothing about comics. Quietly, she realizes the Duke actually has an incredibly sharp eye. Continuing his evaluation, the Duke says that more than anything else, he could clearly feel the red band book considered the reader first. With that, he officially chooses the book with the red band, stunning everyone present. Calmly, he asks once again who created it. Hesitantly, Ashley slowly raises her hand. The Duke then asks whether she currently has any sponsors. Embarrassed, Ashley admits nobody has sponsored her yet, so she has been funding everything with her own money. Hearing this, the Duke calmly announces that he will become her first sponsor. The room instantly falls into shock. The Duke declares that talent should always be prioritized above everything else. Overwhelmed with emotion, Ashley collapses onto the floor while repeatedly thanking His Grace with tears in her eyes. Watching the entire scene unfold leaves April genuinely happy. After Ashley officially takes the lead directing the apprentice artists, the project begins progressing smoothly and rapidly. April honestly never expected Ashley to possess talent in organizing people as well. Even the other artists begin changing their opinions. One comments that Ashley used to be someone they only kept around because nobody could compare to her persistence. Another admits he was worried because her reputation was terrible, but it seems he was completely mistaken. In the end, every person proved useful in their own way. Sometime later, the new comic book is finally completed. Ashley proudly presents the finished work to April and explains this as the comic they created based on the story she provided. Excited beyond belief, April thinks about all the countless stories inside her mind. Romance, fantasy, horror. And now one of them has finally become reality through these artists' incredible drawings. Curious and excited, she wonders how the adaptation turned out. The moment she opens the book, she is instantly shocked. The art quality is overwhelming from the very first page, and the pacing naturally pulls the reader into wanting to turn to the next chapter immediately. Horror is usually a difficult genre to portray properly, yet somehow they expressed it perfectly. Nervously, Ashley asks how it turned out. Completely impressed, April suddenly says she feels like they should hold a company dinner or something. Ashley becomes confused and asks what exactly she means by that. April explains it is an occasional evening gathering companies host to appear considerate toward their workers, though honestly thinking about it now, she used to hate those gatherings herself. Instead, she decides she will simply give everyone additional payment because this comic truly turned out outstanding. She could not be happier with the result. Excitedly clutching the comic, April says she should hurry and show it to the Grand Duke because she is certain he will love it. However, while approaching him, she suddenly notices her heart racing uncontrollably. As the Duke calmly reads the comic in front of her, she begins wondering if perhaps the reason her heart is beating so fast is because the man before her is unbelievably handsome and she has somehow fallen for him. She immediately rejects the thought herself, insisting there is no way. It is obviously because she is terrified. She is about to ask this frightening man for something incredibly nerve-wracking. Still, he really is handsome. Nervously, she wonders if things will work out. Their first impression of each other was terrible, but lately he has softened toward her quite a bit. He even assigned Bonita to her and personally brought her desserts. Then another thought immediately enters her mind. No, if she asks him for anything else, he might just tease her or make her do something weird in return as payback. While she is drowning in these thoughts, the Duke suddenly asks if she has something she wants to say. Surprised, she asks how he noticed. Embarrassed, she says it is honestly a silly request and not something important. The Duke simply tells her to spit it out already. Taking a breath, she asks whether he thinks this comic could actually make money. The Duke becomes confused and asks what exactly she means by that. April quickly explains it feels like such a waste for her alone to read such an incredible high-quality comic book. Artists with talent like this should not simply fade into history without ever making names for themselves. If she could get help from this man, the savior of talented people, then maybe it could actually work. Excitedly, she suggests they try selling the comic so people all across the empire can read it too. Meanwhile, back in the Soul Kingdom, King Burga furiously slams his hand against the table while shouting at his officials. He asks whether their heads are merely decorative because they could not even recognize the difference in the shape of a seal. They allowed a merchant guild with an unknown seal to pass through inspection, and during transport to Cleton, the goods vanished completely without a trace. Of all things, it had to be wheat, the very item whose prices have been skyrocketing lately. One trembling official explains they only process the documents personally approved by Princess Lamia. Hearing this immediately enrages the king even more. He shouts, asking whether the man is insane enough to drag his daughter, the treasure of Solt, into disgrace. Terrified, the official apologizes and insists he only spoke the truth. Furious, the king orders the criminal who insulted royal blood to be dragged away immediately. As guards pull him away, the man desperately cries out that this is unjust and he only followed the princess's commands. Once everyone leaves the room, only Princess Lamia remains behind. Apologetically, she admits she has been pushing herself too hard lately and must have lost her judgment. She says she truly wanted to do well, but somehow things always went smoothly whenever April was around. Not even once did something like this happen before. Quietly, she begins wondering if perhaps she is even more useless than that illegitimate girl. Immediately, she rejects the thought. No, she simply became too dependent on April always handling everything beside her. Once she learns to manage things herself, she will improve eventually. The king sighs deeply before warning her not to repeat the same mistakes again. Grateful for his forgiveness, Lamia promises she will study harder and work even more seriously from now on. Later, while standing alone in the garden, the princess suddenly collapses onto the ground in frustration. She cries out asking why things like this keep happening to her when she truly tried her best. No matter how hard she works, she can never become like April. Then, bitterly, she wonders why she even has to live as desperately as that illegitimate girl in the first place. If her mother had been a lowly maid like April's mother, perhaps then she would also have been forced to struggle desperately in life. But she was not born that way. Why should a noble princess like her suffer such humiliation? While she breaks down emotionally, someone suddenly calls out to her from behind. Instantly, she panics because nobody should ever see the shining jewel of Solt in such a pathetic state. Quickly turning around to ask who is there, she is shocked to see a man standing behind her while offering his hand toward her. As she turns around, she realizes the person standing behind her is her fiancé, Mason. He gently asks whether he arrived at a bad time. Mason is known everywhere as a wealthy and gentle gentleman, but unfortunately he possesses one fatal flaw: his appearance. As he reaches out to help her stand up, the princess shows no interest at all and coldly explains she has simply been stressed from administrative work lately. Clearly annoyed, she asks what brought him there. Mason calmly replies that it has been quite some time since their informal engagement began, so he thought it was finally time for them to discuss marriage. Without even trying to hide her lack of interest, the princess diplomatically replies that with the political issues involving Clayton currently upsetting His Majesty, she believes it is still too early for marriage discussion. Respectfully, Mason says he will always honor her wishes and tells her to rest well before quietly leaving. The moment he walks away, she bitterly thinks there is no way she would ever marry an ugly man like him. After all, she is loved by Crown Prince Raiden of Clayton. Soon enough, she plans to break this engagement and become Raiden's wife instead. Meanwhile, on the other side, April explains her comic book idea further. From what she understands, less than half the common people within the Clayton Empire are literate. However, because comics tell stories through pictures, even people unable to read can still understand the story and context. Not only that, but comics are entertaining as well. As more people grow interested in understanding the stories, it could even positively affect literacy rates over time. Listening to all this leaves the Duke wondering what exactly is going through her head. Rather than attempting escape, she keeps doing strange and unpredictable things, and now she suddenly wants to start a business. This woman who constantly saw through the Empire's plans, who always acted one step ahead while hiding her true intentions, surely must have some deeper motive behind all her actions. The Duke decides he will continue observing her until he uncovers her true purpose. Curious, the Duke asks how she plans to distribute the comics. Excitedly, April suggests publishing them through the Imperial newspaper currently in circulation. The Duke seems surprised by the idea, but April continues explaining her plan. At first they would simply pay to rent newspaper space, but once the comic gains popularity, the newspaper itself would start paying them for the rights to feature it. The profits generated afterward could then be used to properly pay the artists as well. The Duke questions whether she truly believes something like this can generate significant profit. April immediately explains the newspaper itself is not meant for profit but rather for promotional purposes. Later, once the comic gains popularity, they can publish and sell comic books independently. Curious, the Duke asks how exactly they would handle large-scale printing. April explains the Empire's printing system currently operates through the Magic Tower. However, the Duke reveals the Magic Tower is facing an enormous problem right now. Every mage there is completely focused on solving the issue, to the point they abandon their normal work and livelihoods. Hearing this instantly shocks April because she already knows exactly what problem he is talking about. She remembers the event from the original novel Forced Empress. The tower core had started cracking, causing unstable magical power to leak everywhere. Every mage abandoned their normal duties in order to restore it. In the original story, Lamia actually proposed a solution, but the master of the Magic Tower refused to listen to her advice. Eventually, the Magic Tower collapsed completely. The mages were devastated, and every trade system relying on movement magic circles suffered enormous damage. Seoul's food shortages became so severe countless citizens ended up starving in the streets. Determined, April asks whether it would be possible for her to visit the Magic Tower personally. The Duke becomes confused. Quietly, she thinks she already knows the exact solution the original Lamia proposed in the novel. In order to put that plan into action herself, she absolutely has to visit the Magic Tower. She calmly explains she wants to investigate the problem and, if possible, think of a solution. Hearing this surprises the Duke because it is the first time she has ever requested permission to leave the estate. Instantly, suspicion fills his mind. Maybe she plans to contact someone outside. Or perhaps something else entirely. Either way, he decides he will uncover the truth by taking her there personally. Surprisingly, he agrees much more easily than expected. Grateful, April immediately thanks him. Internally, she becomes surprised because he did not even threaten her this time like usual. Maybe he truly has a soft spot for hardworking people. After all, first he sponsored Ashley, and now he is even granting this request as well. As the Duke resumes working, he casually asks if that was everything she wanted to discuss today. April replies yes and begins preparing to leave, but just before exiting she suddenly asks him how many days it has been. Confused, the Duke asks what she means. April quietly asks how long he has been sleeping in his office. Noticing the dark circles beneath his eyes, she guesses it has probably been at least a week already. Seeing him like this reminds her too much of herself right before she died from overwork. Hearing this immediately alarms the Duke. How does she know? He thinks once again that she is not a woman who should ever be underestimated. He absolutely cannot lower his guard around her. Curious yet cautious, he asks what exactly she wants. Without answering directly, April gently reaches out her hand and asks if she may. Confused, the Duke watches silently as she carefully holds his hand. Softly, she asks if the exhaustion feels like it is fading a little. While gently massaging his hand, she explains it is only a folk remedy. Slightly nervous, the Duke reluctantly admits it does seem to help somewhat. Curious, he asks where she learned something like this. April calmly explains it is just an old folk method. Then, with a serious expression, she tells him that no matter how busy he becomes, he must still sleep properly and eat well. No matter how important work may seem, it is never more important than the person doing it. As she says those words, she quietly thinks about how foolish she herself had been in her previous life, pushing herself until she died painfully from endless overwork. She sincerely hopes nobody else ends up dying in such a miserable way. Meanwhile, the Duke becomes unsettled by her words. His exhausted mind feels strangely shaken, and he cannot believe he is actually being affected by simple words like these. Quickly pulling his hand away, he reminds himself not to lower his guard. This could easily just be another manipulation tactic designed to gain his favor and uncover the Empire's weaknesses. Regaining his composure, he calmly tells her he will keep her words in mind. If her business is concluded, then she may leave now. However, the moment he stands up and starts walking, sudden dizziness overwhelms him. Documents scatter across the floor as he stumbles. Lack of sleep and poor nutrition have finally caught up to him, causing headaches and severe dizziness. Instantly, April rushes forward to support him and asks if he is hurt. As she catches him in her arms, both of them suddenly blush. As the Duke looks at her, April suddenly notices something strange. Does he have a fever? Thinking this, she carefully places her hand against his forehead. Instantly, both of them blush, and the Duke quickly swats her hand away while insisting he is perfectly fine. Instead, he points out that she seems to be the injured one. April awkwardly replies it is not like she is dying or anything, so she is fine, but overexertion really can kill a person, so he should please be more careful. Hearing this, the Duke smirks slightly and asks if that makes her his savior now. His words completely confuse her. Calmly, the Duke explains that as repayment for the debt, he will grant her one wish. Hearing this shocks April, and she immediately starts thinking perhaps she should ask for extra snacks this time instead of accidentally ending up with another person. After thinking carefully, however, she says there is actually only one thing she truly needs: a weapon forged from partanium. She nervously explains she thought someone of the Grand Duke's status might possess such an item. Hearing the word partanium causes the Duke to pause. Partanium is an extremely mysterious substance resistant to mana, a rare or so difficult to process that only ancient master craftsmen were capable of forging it properly. Curious, the Duke asks why she would need something like that. April explains she only hopes to borrow it briefly during their visit to the Magic Tower. If she possesses a powerful magical artifact, it might make negotiating business matters much easier. The Duke calmly replies that he does indeed possess a hammer made from partanium. However, he immediately refuses to lend it to her. He reminds her that she is technically a princess abducted by the Grand Duke and currently held captive. There is no way he could simply hand her a weapon. April quietly admits that is actually a fair point. However, if she absolutely needs to bring it to the Magic Tower, then there is still another option. The Duke calmly tells her she will simply accompany him personally to the Magic Tower. Hearing this surprises her. The Duke asks whether she truly thought he would send her there alone. Flustered, April quickly denies that was what she meant at all. She was simply worried someone as busy as him would waste valuable time escorting her personally. Honestly, she assumed he would just send some subordinate instead. So why exactly is he coming himself? Later, while the two of them place their hands against the teleportation stone together, the Duke casually comments that he obviously cannot have her sharing a room with just anyone. Instantly confused, April asks what exactly he just said. The moment they teleport to the Magic Tower, April becomes slightly dizzy. The Duke assumes she must have severe teleportation sickness, but April immediately denies it. The real issue is something entirely different. During their stay at the Magic Tower, she and the Duke are apparently going to share the same room. Calmly, the Duke confirms this is true, though of course they will use separate beds. Hearing this finally relieves her a little, but internally she panics because in her previous life she lived completely alone until literally dying from overwork. She has absolutely zero experience sharing accommodations with a man. Still, she cannot exactly complain that it feels too awkward now. Meanwhile, the Duke quietly watches her while thinking carefully. He is convinced she must have had a deeper reason for wanting to visit the Magic Tower with the partanium artifact. All this talk about business is probably just a smokescreen meant to deceive him. Even her friendly personality lately is likely just an act designed to lower his guard. Because of this, he repeatedly reminds himself not to relax around her no matter what. Now that they are finally inside the magic tower, he believes she will eventually reveal her true intentions. After all, this is a woman capable of placing spies even within the imperial family. If he carefully observes who she tries contacting inside the tower, then he will finally discover the truth behind her motives. Suddenly, a mage announces that a guest has requested an audience with His Grace. The name immediately shocks both of them. Tamil Tonals, envoy of the Soul Kingdom delegation. The Duke instantly becomes suspicious. Why would an envoy from the Soul Kingdom suddenly come looking for him here? Could he have somehow discovered Princess April is present? Does this mean she truly came to the magic tower in order to secretly contact an important figure from her homeland? The Duke quickly starts suspecting this entire trip might have been an escape plan from the beginning. While he is lost in thought, he suddenly notices April trying to hide herself. Confused, he quietly asks what she is doing. April immediately whispers she plans to stay hidden there without making a sound, so he should please pretend she does not exist at all. This only confuses the Duke even more. Moments later, the guest enters the room. Politely bowing, Tamil says it is truly an honor to finally meet the Duke face to face after hearing so many rumors about him. He claims it brings great honor to his family as well. Meanwhile, while the conversation happens above, Princess April is secretly hiding underneath the Duke's desk. Internally, April feels deeply uncomfortable because Tamil absolutely despised her in the past. He constantly insulted and humiliated her for being an illegitimate child. Not only that, he openly sided with Lamia and worked her to the bone for years. Trying desperately to calm herself down, April silently listens while the Duke coldly tells the envoy to state his business concisely. Tamil immediately explains the reason for his visit is the severe food shortage currently affecting the Soul Kingdom. In fact, the urgent reason their delegation came to the Magic Tower was specifically to seek support and solutions regarding the crisis, but they were refused. Hearing this immediately confirms April's fears. Just like in the original story, the kingdom's food shortage has already reached the point where commoners will soon begin starving to death. She silently thinks she tried everything possible to prevent this tragedy, yet in the end it still happened anyway. Tamil respectfully continues, saying the royal family of Seoul would be deeply grateful if His Grace could help persuade Cleton to slightly lift its grain export prohibition, even just a little. However, the Duke coldly replies he sees no reason to involve himself in matters unrelated to him. The hunger of Seoul's people is the responsibility of the Seoul royal family to solve themselves. While he says this, April desperately reaches out from beneath the desk and quietly signals toward him, silently pleading for him to help them somehow. As April desperately signals for the Duke to help them, Tamil continues speaking emotionally, saying Princess Lamia has been suffering deeply because of the hunger her people are facing. Every single day, she sheds tears for them. He introduces himself proudly as Tamil Tonis, Princess Lamia's personal aide. However, before he can continue further, the Duke coldly refuses his request. Tamil immediately falls to his knees and desperately explains that Princess Lamia shares a special relationship with His Royal Highness Prince Raiden. Unmoved, the Duke replies that he keeps bringing up matters completely unrelated to him. While the Duke speaks, April secretly tugs at his clothes from beneath the desk and emotionally whispers that this entire situation happened because of him. Hearing this completely confuses the Duke because he has no idea what she means. Quietly, April explains that if he had not tried tricking her into buying wheat just to test her, innocent people would not be starving right now. So can he please help them somehow? Her words leave the Duke speechless for a moment. Meanwhile, his pants are practically about to fall down because of how hard she is pulling on them beneath the desk. Embarrassed, he quietly tells her to let go immediately, but she stubbornly refuses and instead keeps insisting he should help. Watching the Duke suddenly pause like this leaves Tamil deeply confused. After thinking silently for a moment, the Duke finally speaks. He says that if starving people living near the border begin resorting to theft, then naturally that would become troublesome for his territory as well. Therefore, he will send knights from the Grand Duchy to investigate and resolve the wheat fraud issue personally. Hearing this immediately fills Tamil with joy. Overwhelmed, he repeatedly thanks the Duke and promises Princess Lamia herself will express her gratitude soon before finally leaving the room. Once Tamil disappears, the Duke immediately orders April to come out and explain herself properly, instantly frightening her. Internally, April cannot help thinking the Duke does not even seem slightly sorry that people in Salt are starving partly because of his schemes. However, she quickly realizes she absolutely cannot say something like that out loud. Instead, she hurriedly says that rather than helping Salt, she plans to help him instead. Curious, the Duke asks how exactly she plans to do that. April explains she will make sure he survives even if war eventually breaks out with Prince Raiden. Completely unbothered, the Duke asks what exactly she means by that. Quietly, April recalls how she originally had no idea who this man really was when she was first kidnapped. But after spending time inside the Grand Duchy, she finally realized his true identity. This man is Prince Raiden's half-brother, the male lead's greatest thorn in the eye. Raiden himself is a madman obsessed with power and Princess Lamia. To eliminate rivals, he would falsely accuse innocent people and drive them away without hesitation. If necessary, he would even kill them. Calmly, the Duke explains that Prince Raiden has always been wary of him and openly dislikes him. This is information only the closest members of the imperial family should know. Realizing she somehow understands even their complicated relationship leaves the Duke stunned. Just how far does this woman's intelligence truly go? Stepping closer toward her, the Duke admits the more he sees her, the more curious he becomes. Every single action she takes is impossible to understand, and the more he observes her, the more desperate he becomes to uncover her true identity. As he slowly approaches her, April begins getting nervous herself. Meanwhile, she internally panics because she somehow completely overlooked such an important character all this time. She thought she already understood everything about Solt's situation until a few years ago, yet clearly she missed something huge. Suddenly, the Duke informs her that tomorrow he will be meeting with the Tower Master personally. Because of the problem with the Magic Tower's core, the Tower Master cannot leave its side, so their discussion will take place beside it instead. Hearing this instantly excites April internally. It worked. She finally gained access to the Magic Tower's core. Trying to stay calm, she simply replies that means they will be going together tomorrow, right? The Duke confirms it with a small smile and says he is looking forward to tomorrow. Internally, however, he believes the true purpose behind her visit to the Magic Tower will finally reveal itself soon, along with whoever she intended to secretly meet from the Seoul delegation. The next day, inside the Magic Tower, a man politely welcomes the Duke while apologizing for meeting in such an inconvenient location due to the tower's internal problems. Curious, the man asks who the guest accompanying the Duke is. The Duke calmly introduces April as someone temporarily staying at the Grand Duchy and explains she apparently has a business proposal for the Magic Tower itself. This immediately confuses the man. A business proposal? Politely, he thanks them for the offer, but explains every wizard in the Magic Tower is currently completely occupied with internal matters. However, April calmly interrupts and says there is actually something she would like to show him first. She asks the Duke for the box he is carrying. As the box opens, everyone sees a weapon crafted from Partanium. Calmly, April explains she believes this item is exactly what the Magic Tower desperately needs right now. Completely confused, the man asks what possible use the Magic Tower could have for a rare ore like Partanium. Without answering directly, April slowly lifts the weapon into her hands. Quietly, she recalls the method the original Lamia suggested in the novel, the same solution the Tower Master foolishly refused to accept. Then, before anyone can react, she suddenly swings the weapon down directly onto the Magic Tower core itself. The enormous crystal instantly cracks, shocking everyone in the room. Calmly, April announces that the only way to solve the problem is to completely destroy it. Everyone is left completely shocked after April suddenly destroys the Magic Tower's core. Panic spreads everywhere as the mages begin shouting that the core has been broken. They scream that they poured enormous amounts of magic into restoring it, and if something goes wrong now, the entire Magic Tower itself could be affected. Suddenly, however, something strange happens. The violent vibrations throughout the tower completely stop. The caretaker of the Magic Tower stares at the core in disbelief before shouting that the core has actually been restored, and even the flow of mana has stabilized again. Calmly, April explains that the Magic Tower's core had been shedding. Everyone mistakenly believed it was being destroyed, so they kept forcibly pouring magic into it in an attempt to preserve it. However, doing that only made the flow of mana more unstable. Now that the shedding has been completely broken away using the Partanium hammer, there will no longer be any problem with the Magic Tower at all. The caretaker remains completely stunned and asks how she could possibly know something like that. Quietly, April thinks it is because she already saw the original story before, though obviously she cannot say something like that out loud. Instead, she simply claims she heard the voice of the core itself. The moment the caretaker hears those words, he becomes completely overwhelmed. Excitedly, he declares that someone capable of hearing the voice of Manhwa only appears once every 1,000 years. He immediately announces his intention to bestow upon her the title of heir of the Magic Tower and promises to officially send the documentation to the Clayton Empire later. The title itself carries enormous value because anyone possessing it may request the Magic Tower's assistance free of charge up to 3 times in their lifetime. Since magical services usually cost astronomical amounts of money, this privilege is considered priceless. Curious, they ask her to formally introduce herself properly so the title can be awarded correctly. Instantly panicking, April realizes she absolutely cannot reveal she is Princess April of Salt, who is currently kidnapped and being held captive. Thinking quickly, she instead says all of this was actually the Grand Duke's plan from the very beginning, so it would be far more appropriate to grant the title of heir of the Magic Tower to the Grand Duke instead. Hearing this completely confuses the Duke. Meanwhile, the caretaker immediately accepts her words and respectfully bows toward the Duke, formally declaring he will now serve him as the heir of the Magic Tower and asking him to contact the tower anytime he requires assistance. Surprisingly, however, the Duke does not seem especially impressed by the honor. April then explains the privilege was originally obtained thanks to him anyway, so it would feel shameless for her to use it entirely for herself. Instead, she proposes they simply split the benefits equally. The Duke places some documents onto the table before quietly asking whether this was truly the reason she requested the Partanium weapon earlier. Slightly confused, April simply answers yes. The Duke then asks how exactly she knew the core could be stabilized this way. Nervously, she once again mentions hearing the voice of the core. Immediately, the Duke tells her not to lie. His sharp response startles April slightly. Trying to explain herself better, she says it was information she learned back when she was acting as Princess Lamia's proxy in Salt. Because of that role, she ended up collecting all sorts of miscellaneous knowledge over time. Quickly changing the subject, April excitedly points out that now the Magic Tower's problem has been solved, mass production of comic books can officially begin using the tower's magical printing system. If the business succeeds, then everyone benefits. The Duke profits as the investor, she profits herself, and the artists benefit too. Isn't that perfect for everyone involved? Quietly, the Duke places his hand against the desk and gently plays with her hair while asking something that genuinely interests him. Even while kidnapped and confined inside the Grand Duchy, she keeps working so hard and doing all these incredible things. If she was capable of this much here, then what exactly was she doing back in Salt all this time? Then, while still touching her hair, he quietly asks why she never tries going back there. His question shocks her slightly. Calmly, April admits she simply does not want to return. Hearing this leaves the Duke surprised. She explains she does not want to keep living like a slave anymore. She already told him before that she was basically Princess Lamia's servant. Harsh working conditions, terrible treatment, incompetent superiors, and people like Tomold constantly clinging to those superiors while exploiting her endlessly. Compared to all of that, she is genuinely happier now. In fact, she plans to work hard specifically to protect this peaceful life. No more than that, she wants to become an even more affluent homebody than before. She wants the comic book business to become an enormous success. Looking directly at him, she asks if he could please allow her to continue staying there. She already shared the privilege of the Magic Tower with him, and she fully intends to share the comic business profits too. Quietly, the Duke begins wondering if she is actually serious. The title of heir of the Magic Tower truly is an incredible privilege. With the backing of the Magic Tower itself, even the imperial family would not dare treat someone carelessly. As he recalls all her actions since arriving at the Grand Duchy, he quietly wonders whether he actually wants to believe this woman now. After thinking silently for a moment, he finally says he will speak with the Tower Lord again later and discuss the comic book business in detail. Eventually, the comic business becomes a massive success. April excitedly receives fan letters from readers everywhere. For the first time in her life, she experiences overwhelming love and attention from so many people. Fans eagerly wait for future volumes, and she already plans to begin work on Volume 2. Printing speed continues increasing rapidly, and everything progresses perfectly. Later, while sitting alone inside her room, April notices the sunlight feels annoyingly bright. Bonita asks whether she failed to get enough sleep again today. Since the young lady has been working so hard lately, they even prepared a brand new comfortable room for her. Bonita asks whether it is not better because it is much wider and brighter than before. Internally, April admits the room itself is wonderful. The real issue is that she usually falls asleep at dawn, yet sunlight keeps waking her up early every morning. Back when she stayed inside prison, no sunlight entered at all. Honestly, it would be much better if the curtains were thicker. They still are nowhere near as good as the blackout curtains she loved in her previous life. Suddenly, an idea flashes into her mind. Instantly standing up, she excitedly declares that she has finally figured it out. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Raiden receives news that the Grand Duke Blair has officially received the title of Heir of the Magic Tower. His assistants explain the Duke reportedly provided the crucial advice that solved the tower's crisis. Not only that, but the kidnapping of Princess Lamia failed completely as well. Furious, Raiden comments that every single mission he assigns somehow ends in failure, and now the Duke is even interfering in the affairs of the Magic Tower itself. Quietly, Raiden says it seems he now needs to teach the Duke a proper lesson. As April approaches the Duke with a request, he looks at her in confusion and asks if she really wants pleated leather. Calmly, she replies yes. The Duke says obtaining it is not difficult at all, but then suspiciously asks what kind of trouble she plans on causing this time. Immediately, April denies having any strange intentions. She explains she heard the number of pleated beasts has increased enormously over the last few years, and even the Grand Duke himself personally led extermination squads against them. Quietly, she recalls the details she read in the original novel. She also heard the Grand Duchy currently possesses so much pleated leather that handling it all has become nearly impossible. Because of that, she wants to use it to create something completely new. Hearing this, the Duke simply says she may proceed however she likes. Since the mansion is already overflowing with pleated leather, finding a useful purpose for it would honestly be a win for everyone involved. Happily, April thanks him and prepares to leave, but the Duke suddenly stops her and asks what exactly she plans on making. With a cheeky smile, April simply replies that it is still a secret for now. Later that night, she lies restlessly in bed unable to sleep. She quietly wonders how long it has been since she last slept in a bed this comfortable. Maybe she should have simply told him the truth after all. Seeing him look slightly disappointed earlier strangely touched her a little. Still, giving the gift directly to the person before finishing it would ruin the surprise. Recently, everyone inside the Grand Duke's mansion has been suffering from severe sleep deprivation because the Duke personally had to lead the beast extermination squad against the Crown Prince's forces. During his absence, countless responsibilities under House Blair piled up untouched, and now that he finally returned, the entire mansion has fallen into a sleep-deprived workaholic state. Thinking about this, April finally settles on her idea. A gift of peaceful deep sleep for everyone working inside the mansion. The perfect invention. Blackout curtains. Quietly, she recalls the mountain of documents she saw earlier in the Duke's office. At this rate, the Duke probably will not get any sleep tonight either. Suddenly, another thought slips into her mind. Is it because he is exhausted? Or does he somehow look more attractive than usual lately? Instantly embarrassed, she quickly denies the thought and buries herself deeper inside the blankets. No, she should stop thinking nonsense and focus on her sacred bed instead. The blackout curtains are definitely for her own sake first and foremost. Of course, she plans to make some for Bonita, Leon, and the other mansion staff as well. Naturally, she will also give a set to the Duke too. Quietly scolding herself, she tells herself to hurry up and sleep already. The next day, she is guided toward an old storage room. Looking at the terrifying piles of materials stacked around the entrance, she wonders what exactly all this horrifying stuff even is because the door itself barely closes anymore. The entire storage building looks ancient, covered in overgrown wild plants everywhere. A servant explains that His Highness personally ordered every piece of pleated leather circulating throughout the Grand Duchy to be gathered there specifically for Princess April. Hearing this leaves April stunned. Did she somehow save him in a previous life or something? As they step inside the storage room, endless piles of leather greet her eyes. Shocked, she realizes the amount is far greater than she originally expected. Quietly, she begins wondering how many extermination missions the Duke personally participated in to gather this much leather. At this point, it almost feels like the Duke alone is handling the entire Empire's problems by himself. Suddenly, a horrible smell reaches her nose, causing her to recoil immediately. She asks what exactly that awful smell is. The servant explains it comes from the untreated pleated leather itself. Since the hides have not been properly cleaned yet, the remaining byproducts release an extremely strong odor. Turning toward Bonita, April asks whether she knows anyone capable of processing leather into fabric properly. Bonita confidently replies of course she does. There is an expert named Miss Rainey, a tailor with unmatched skill throughout the entire Grand Duke's mansion. Bonita enthusiastically describes how delicate and elegant Miss Rainey's fingers are, saying watching her work feels almost like listening to someone perform beautifully on a harp. Curious, April immediately asks if she can meet Miss Rainey right now. Bonita happily agrees, and soon they arrive at the Grand Duke's reception room to meet the famous tailor. However, the moment April sees her, she becomes completely surprised. Instead of someone graceful and elegant looking, Miss Rainey appears like a large intimidating woman with an angry expression. In a harsh voice, she bluntly asks Lady April what exactly she needs. Quietly, April thinks she definitely did not expect someone so talented to look like this at all. As April sits nervously in front of Miss Rainey, hesitating for a moment, she finally gathers the courage to speak. She asks Miss Rainey if she would be willing to accept a commission to process the Polita leather. However, Miss Rainey immediately replies that while she appreciates the offer, she must refuse. Confused, April asks why. Miss Rainey calmly explains that the payment for processing Polita leather is far too low compared to the amount of labor involved. On top of that, there is almost no demand for it, especially during such hot weather when very few people would even look for heavy leather products. Producing Polita leather items during a season like this is simply too risky from a business perspective. As she stands up, Miss Rainey apologizes politely if April had been counting on her assistance. Although April calmly says it is alright, internally she immediately panics because this is absolutely not alright. She cannot let her dream of cozy mornings without sunlight disappear like this. There has to be another solution somehow. Just as Miss Rainey prepares to leave, she suddenly pauses and asks exactly what April intends to create with the leather in the first place. April replies that she wants to make curtains. Hearing this completely confuses Miss Rainey. Since Polita leather naturally blocks sunlight extremely well, April explains she realized it could potentially be used for curtains instead. Instantly, April realizes this is her chance and decides she absolutely has to convince her now. Excitedly, she explains she plans to create blackout curtains capable of completely blocking sunlight. She passionately describes the entire idea in detail. She even reveals that she intends to make them for the Grand Duke's residence as well because everyone there has been so overworked lately that they barely sleep at night anymore. Emotionally, she explains she wanted to create something capable of giving everyone comfortable sleep even during the daytime. Watching April and Bonita sincerely explain the situation together leaves Miss Rainey slightly moved. However, she still replies that while it is certainly a sad story, she is ultimately a businesswoman and must focus on profits above emotion. Once again, she prepares to leave. Before she can walk away though, April suddenly proposes another offer. She says she will pay Miss Rainey a rate even higher than the cost of her most expensive fabrics. Furthermore, if overtime work becomes necessary, she will pay double for those hours as well. If Miss Rainey still refuses after hearing that, then it truly would be unfortunate, but April will simply find someone else instead. Hearing this instantly shocks Bonita, who loudly declares it is an unbelievable offer. In all her years living in the Grand Duchy, she has never once heard such incredible working conditions. Slightly embarrassed, April quietly thinks this was simply considered standard where she originally came from. Bonita nervously asks whether she is truly sure she can afford all this. Meanwhile, Miss Rainey admits this proposal is honestly impossible to refuse. There is no reason for her to reject such generous conditions, and she promises to do her absolute best. Both April and Bonita become excited immediately. However, Miss Rainey explains she cannot handle everything alone and will require additional skilled workers specializing in leather processing, especially experienced tanners. Without hesitation, April immediately tells her to hire as many workers as necessary. Hearing this completely shocks Bonita once again. She reminds April that she is technically a captive and practically penniless at the moment, so how exactly does she plan to pay all these people? Surely she did not make such outrageous promises without any actual plan. With a cheeky smile, April simply tells her not to worry because she already has a plan prepared.